My name is Luke Sperrin, so Senior Practice Lead in Energy Sustainability at the Digital Catapult. So I just want to sort of frame today's discussions around setting expectations. So this isn't a technology pitch and it's not a market update, but it's sort of an operator's view of what the system actually needs as renewables accelerate and storage moves from pipeline to delivery. It's an operator's view of what the system actually needs as the renewables accelerate to storage and moves from pipeline to delivery. Now, there we go. So just as a backdrop, so the Catapults network, not everyone's probably familiar with us. So we were set up by the government about more than 10 years ago, and we're a non-for-profit, and we're here to sort of accelerate innovation. And there's sort of a collection of catapults, 9 catapults, and 65 national locations across the UK. And we sort of connect government, investors, startups, and we sort of understand where there could be gaps in the market and where we can sort of accelerate innovation in the UK. Now, more specifically, what the Digital Catapult does. So we focus on sort of the practical adoption of deep tech. So we often run innovation programs, we do testbed facilities, we run pilots and proof of concepts. We also highlight sort of policy recommendations and lead research on emerging technologies trends. So more of a cross-sectional approach. So I'm sort of in the energy bit, but we also do stuff with defense, creative industries, and also sort of industrial supply chains as well. And the sort of bottom line is, we're accelerating the practical application of deep tech to equip the UK to be future ready. Now, sort of going back to sort of the problem that was pitched at the start. So, what I hear consistently for operators, so we're not an operator ourselves, we work with operators and networks, is that they're not running out of capacity, megawatts. What we're running out of is short of confidence that assets will respond when they need to or meant to, where they're meant to, and also under stress. So essentially, variability is increasingly correlated, assets are increasingly distributed, and the time available to act is shrinking. Oops, sorry. And I think we're all aware that we're through a big transformation at the moment. So the system was was designed for predictability and central control. You've got these big power stations, one-way flows, and also scheduled dispatch. And essentially what we're moving to is something that's fundamentally different, millions of assets connected autonomously, coordinated digitally, essentially. And operators aren't really controlling assets anymore, they're managing outcomes, essentially. Oops. So what operators actually need? So when operators look at flexibility, they don't ask what technology you've built, they ask for much simpler questions. So is it fast, is it predictable? Is it in the right place, and can I trust it? Essentially, those 4 things increasingly matter more than the headline capacity. And so, I've sort of highlighted some of the important parts here. So, fast response really matters. So, sort of 1 megawatt is not 1 megawatt. It depends, how quickly can you get it out. Response time and repeatability increasingly matter more than size. So, an asset that responds quickly every time under stress is far more valuable to the system than only performs in ideal conditions. We've also got sort of duration and context. So operators don't think in hours on a spec sheet; they think in scenarios. So would it work on a cold Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock? What problems does this asset solve then? Is it stability? Is it congestion? Is it balancing? And for how long? And then, as renewable scales, value becomes increasingly local. So a megawatt in the wrong place can be worth very little, while a smaller asset in the right location can be critical. Constraints are local, and data is what unlocks these locational signals. So I might slow down a bit, but so connections reform. So connections reform isn't administrative, it's sort of behavioral. Projects are no longer rewarded for just being early in the queue. It's all about judged on deliverability, readiness, and operability. So in practice, this means that assets can actually connect. Can this actually connect, comply, and behave as expected? Sort of moving on to how storage strategy is changing. So it used to be about building big, how much capacity, but now it's sort of is it behaving well across markets, across conditions, and across time. We've got controls, data, flexibility of operation are just as important as the hardware itself. In terms of sort of operability and primacy, so as assets move between multiple markets, conflicts arise. So balancing services, constraint management, wholesale optimization, sometimes all at once. From an operator's perspective, that matters. What matters clearly is which service wins and why, and how can that logic be trusted. Essentially, they need something they can trust. I mean, essentially, yeah, if you can't see it, there's a simple operator test. If I can't see it, forecast it, or control it, or trust it, it will be derated and constrained or ignored. So it's not just a value judgment; it's sort of basic risk management, essentially, what the operators are looking at. In terms of where storage sits, so obviously it sits as a wider portfolio. So alongside demand, flexibility, EVs, heat, and industrial load. So on its own, storage is useful, but it's in a coordinated portfolio. It's powerful, and that kind of links back to some of the locational stuff as well, and what operators can consistently prefer. In terms of so what I hear all the time again and again is sort of one interface, one assurance layer, and then mixed assets underneath. So how the portfolio is built matters is far less to how it behaves. So so how the portfolio is built in matters far less than how it behaves. So what they're looking is for collection of assets and sort of ease of use and integrating into the systems that they currently run. In terms of what looks good in 2026, so by 2026, good flexibility will be boring. So that's a compliment. Boring means predictable. Predictable means trusted, and trusted assets get used. So that's essentially what they're looking for. So in terms of performance data and control aren't separate concerns. So operators experience them as one thing, sort of behavior. If the system can't observe, predict, and control an asset in near real time, they won't rely on it. And so these are the sort of the key things to look at. In terms of use cases, which we're seeing emerging with operators, so we're already seeing sort of place-based portfolios responding automatically to local constraints. They reduce curtailment, defer reinforcement, and then solve problems exactly where they occur without manual intervention. So they're sort of autonomous and locational-based, place-based solutions. And then sort of you've got this is also the multi-market storage. So this is where a sort of a storage asset increasingly serves multiple markets. So you response over different timeframes and different use cases. That only works if optimization decisions are transparent and auditable. So they need to understand why it's behaving in a certain way as well. Trust doesn't come from clever algorithms. It comes from sort of predictable outcomes. So sort of a well-tested solution. And then we're also seeing sort of pre-connection flexibility. So some assets can deliver the flexibility before they've got the firm connection, because the idea is it sort of reduces that uncertainty, but it only works with the right visibility, control, and confidence. And without those early operational increases risk rather than reducing it. In terms of so digital confidence scales faster than concrete. Software data and interoperability now underpin physical delivery. Without them, assets remain potential rather than capability. So sort of moving towards deliverability and capability, and sort of this digital process is sort of helping assure delivery of this. Now sort of just moving along to why also we're involved a lot with this energy flexibility side is essentially there's a lot of deep tech that need testing and development, and moving up the TRLs across this sort of this digital spine. So I mean, you're talking about IoT sensors that monitor energy usage. We've got teams that work on that and looking about how they can integrate and how they interact. We obviously need advanced comms for real-time comms. You need to be able to, once you've collected the data from the sensors, it's like, how do you then transmit that, reliable and over, across different locations. And then essentially, once you've got all the data, how do you coordinate that? So using AI in real time for optimization and load prediction. So whether it's prediction, coordination, AI at the edge, it's kind of how do you orchestrate all of this information in a most efficient and optimized manner. And then you can kind of see, yeah, it's combining multiple different kinds of assets. It's all sort of data sharing and how that is then brought together and interoperable. So you're talking about, yeah, homes and offices and EVs and appliances, and then sort of changing that in real time across multiple different users and devices, which is very complex. So in terms of where the digital catapult role sits, so we're not here to sell isn't a run system or sell products. We're sort of here to de-risk delivery, bring operators, innovators, and investors and policymakers together around operability, integration, and trust. So sort of a neutral convener, and we help startups move up the TRLs, improve their technology, but also help them produce business models and see where they fit within the market, and also talking government about what needs to happen to enable these and allow this maybe different kinds of technology and innovators to access this space. GridFlex. So this is sort of we're midway through this multi-year national program. So this is designed to accelerate the adoption of deep tech innovations to enhance energy flexibility and support the UK clean power mission. So this is sort of funded by Innovate UK, and we're working alongside Energy Systems Catapult. And I think the focus here is there's a system change, and there needs to be technology focuses as well. So some of the areas that we're looking at are sort of, how all these things interact. So you've got electric vehicles, domestic heating and the network itself, and then all the way from, the batteries, as well as the industrial and commercial processes, and how that all brings together on a location-based effect, and what technologies are needed to coordinate all of this effectively. So yeah, closing and takeaways is leaving a lot of time for questions, I realize. So yeah, welcome to sort of have a good conversation and understand who's here and what their takeaways are. But yeah, flexibility only counts if the group can rely on it. And so yeah, sort of finishing where I started is that I know, yeah, so flexibility only counts if the group can rely on it, and over the next couple of years, delivery will matter more than potential. Assets that sort of connect, behave, and perform will shape the system we actually end up with. And obviously within the energy sector, there's a lot of legacy systems. So it's kind of, rather than development in isolation, it's like, how can you integrate and build on what's there, but then make sure that's moved along in a sort of the most efficient way as possible, and it allows everyone to sort of extract value in the most optimized way. And then, yeah, sorry, I've got my email address there if you wanted to reach out. But yeah, we sort of work with everyone, and we sort of connect big industrial players and with small startups, and work within sort of the regulated space as well, with sort of a strategic innovation fund and network innovation allowance projects. There's first of the kind projects that do feasibility work, and also proof of concept, and all the way to sort of deployable and scalable innovation across networks as well. And yeah, we sort of work a lot with startups, government. So yeah, looking forward to sort of hearing what questions there are, and also sort of exploring potential collaboration. We're here to partner, and we're here to accelerate tech and also advancement within the UK technology sector. Yeah, that's me.
Amazing. Thank you, Luke. So I am waiting for Q&As to come in, but while we wait, I have my own questions.
Yes.
You spoke about what the system needs when it comes to flexibility. If you had to prioritize one gap the market still is not addressing very well, what would that gap be?
So you're saying, okay, so what's sort of the major bottleneck within enabling the flexibility space at the moment?
Yeah.
I think so. What we're seeing through the GridFlex program is that there's a lot of innovators facing different barriers, and so you've got basically these. There needs to be a place where you can bring all this knowledge together, so they can sort of address these barriers together rather than work in isolation. So it's sort of a disaggregated. There's a lot of stuff within the flexibility space. But it's not really connected. And I think if there's a shared space where people can sort of understand the barriers, and by doing that, it's sort of it'll help bring in investment money essentially to sort of build that market. And that's what's holding it back at the moment. And the investors won't bring in funding until they clearly understand the different pathways and how everyone interacts. So it's kind of like connected knowledge to allow for investors to bring in their money to then scale the opportunity there. There's obviously a lot of, I mean, part of that is obviously regulation, and that's part of the knowledge and market education, sort of what needs to change to allow those innovators. And but then, yeah, it's part of that knowledge sharing and understanding.
How do you think we get to that change?
Well, so that's what we're hoping to do through these national programs, where you, rather than ending up with a lot of separate different projects, it's kind of like, hey, bringing everyone to one space, you know, government, investors, technologists, and sort of just plotting out the pathways and lighthousing specific use cases, I think. So obviously with this, you'll there'll be specific like use cases that will be most beneficial first of all, and then they'll sort of build out what the opportunities and use cases are. So it's highlighting where we can get the most benefit from flexibility as a national level. But I think what we're seeing is also a lot of funding for sort of regional based energy projects. So which is a sort of a, rather than the top down approach, is like a grassroots up. So if you can sort of show the feasibility and then show some of the demonstrators and then connect them together, that's sort of in my vision what I'd see.
Amazing. We do have a question from Ben Lane. He says, for EV charging infrastructure deployment, what are the opportunities, I'm assuming that is, for low power grid connections using battery storage to utilize secondary grid connections to accelerate the rollout of charging hubs?
So in terms of there's a lot of sort of innovation projects with the EV charging going on. I think, sorry, if you re-click the question there. Sorry, is it on the screen there? Let me just, because it was quite a long.
You can see it on the Q&A.
Yeah, I've got it
now.
Yeah. So the sort of charging hubs. I think there's a lot of opportunity with around sort of residential charging, connecting with your solar, and then sort of and I think we're interested obviously in the bidirectional charging, where you can use your EV card as a way of a battery storage for your home, but the technology needs to move on a little bit more. And obviously, if we're then talking about charging infrastructure and maybe along the major motorways, obviously it's difficult to get large grid connections out there to the middle of some remote areas. So they're then looking for like, okay, well, yeah, you're sort of about the discharge of a small town. There's quite a large connection to have. So maybe having batteries to help smooth out those really peak. There's some opportunity there. I think from my previous experiences, I mean, you want to use the battery as much as possible to then be able to lower the cost of the battery itself, because it's all about the levelized cost of storage. I think I'd have to think about a little bit more around that. But we are continually seeing sort of rather than it being a big battery farm, it's kind of like this distributed. Can you then use multiple devices across a distributed area to then coordinate? I mean, I think there was one study I saw where it was like you installed heat pumps for a local village, and if they all turned on at the same time, then it would cause instability in the sort of voltage. So. But then if you got them talking to each other, you could then even make it more stable in terms of voltage stabilization. So it's all about these devices talking to each other and in a connected fashion to get the make sure that we're sort of enhancing the services that we're providing. Because I think at the bottom line, that people aren't going to accept something that's worse off from today. So it's kind of like, okay, well, it's obviously we need to learn and build, but it needs to show how it's better than today rather than being a backward step.
Things need to communicate, because if everything knows what it's meant to do, then things should be smoother. On Ben Lane's point as well, I know BYD, obviously they're using battery storage to enable faster charging as well. It's not just a flexibility thing, but it's also they can enable, I think it's 1,500 kilowatts charging purely by using a battery that trickle charges through the grid, rather than expecting the grid to deliver 1,500 kilowatts to a car at once. So obviously batteries can obviously help there. On connections reform and queue readiness, what separates projects that are likely to move forward successfully from those that may actually struggle?
Yeah, so I think some of the recent changes, and I think there's some interesting interactions here with like data centers as well, because increasingly it's sort of rather than whoever's first, who's ready first. It's also about like reorganizing the national priorities and what's seen as like
Mm,
uh, required national infrastructure. So there's a bit of reorganizing it. It wasn't just whoever was first or whoever's ready, and now it's like, okay, well, if there's some sort of national significance, they can also get ahead of time. I think a lot of the problem at the moment is that essentially people are scoping for like, okay, well, this is what I will need over the next 10 years. We'll go in with the application straight away. I think there's something about transparency about realistic saying, okay, well, I need this now, I need this then,
mm,
rather than trying to like just big the whole thing straight away. So I think that we were looking at a piece around like data sharing across multiple connectors to understand the and obviously that's very commercial information about how you're growing and what connection you want. So it's like can you use distributed systems rather than central servers to try and calculate over the top of this sensitive information, like using blockchain technology and stuff like that. So it's like, how can you do enhanced information sharing through distributed systems or compute over the top side of things to try and enable some of this connection queue reform? At the moment, as obviously it sits with NISO, and it's a rule based, that they have in terms of how they're prioritizing connections. And then
mm.
there's other stuff that's being worked on, like the data sharing, the DSI stuff, about like how can you try and take learnings from the finance sector and share data in the energy sector. And it means that people don't have to give up their confidential data, but then it allows more effective optimization and build out of the grid and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you mentioned data centers there at the beginning. Obviously, one of the issues that we have at the moment is a lot of people worried about the power that data centers are going to use, but a lot of what is assumed the data center will take is speculative power. It's
Yeah,
basically people trying to get ahead of the gold rush,
yeah.
and they're saying we're going to build this, but not necessarily. How do we build a system when a lot of it is just speculation and may never actually be built? How do we plan for a system there?
Yeah, it's sort of a bit more like coordinated response. I think where I am, so I'm sort of in West London. It's got like I think within certain postcodes, there's like several data center applications been sent in. So it's kind of like it's a bit of a sort of a wild west where it's a bit like everyone's applying, and it's not well. It's now being assessed to how to coordinate that and sort of doing more of this like local area planning, regional energy planning. So you're thinking about how do you coordinate residential industry in the most sort of future ready way. So it's kind of like rather than it just sort of allowing people to sort of submit requests, it's like, okay, well, you get local authorities on board to try to understand what's best for the area, how to coordinate, rather than it being sort of just submit and prioritize. It's like a bit more of a cooperative build out from the bottom up.
Yeah, and I guess last question, maybe one more, if anyone has one. Looking ahead over the next 12 to 24 months, what do you think will matter most? Speed of deployment, duration, location, or operational sophistication?
Yeah, well, I'm seeing. I think it's like sort of place-based energy kind of thing. So it's very much like rather than you're looking at like what's best for that area, and like I know like sort of the West Midlands. Like I think they looked at if they then put all of, there's not enough space to put the renewable assets to then match its demand. So I think they're sitting at a 20% energy deficit. So they know they're going to have to innovate and think about how they move energy and be more flexible about it. So I think it's very much sort of a location-based. What's best for industry and people in that area, and how do they then overcome those challenges with a portfolio of assets, essentially. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Luke.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time this morning.
Great.
And yeah, have a great day.
Great. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone. And yeah, follow up if you've got any questions.